She stood at the counter clutching her last crumpled dollar. The cashier sighed. "Ma'am, this isn't enough." But the single dad behind her stepped forward and said 6 words that changed everything. "I'll take them all." Snow drifted lazily outside the dusty window of Maple Corner Diner, a tiny old breakfast shop squeezed between 2 tall buildings like a forgotten memory. It was Christmas morning, when families filled warm homes, when laughter echoed through kitchens, when gifts waited under sparkling trees. But Ava Morgan had none of those things. She stood alone at the counter of the diner, shivering inside her faded coat, clutching a single dollar, her last dollar, between her trembling fingers. She hadn't meant to end up like this. 1 lost job turned into 2. 1 month of unpaid rent turned into eviction. And suddenly, she was living in a shelter, trying to keep her pride from collapsing under the weight of everything she had failed to be. All she wanted this morning, on a day the world called magical, was something warm to eat. Something simple. Something that made her feel human again. "A single pancake," she whispered to the cashier. "Please." The cashier, a tired woman wearing a sugary pink apron, typed something into the machine and frowned. "That'll be $1.47, she said. Ava froze. She had known it wouldn't be enough. She had hoped desperately, that maybe they'd let it slide. That kindness existed somewhere. That on Christmas morning, a single pancake wouldn't cost more than she had left. She offered the dollar anyway, voice cracking. "It's all I have." The cashier looked apologetic but helpless. "I'm sorry, sweetheart, but the register won't let me ring it in for less." Ava nodded, blinking back the sting in her eyes. Pride burned in her throat. She didn't want pity. She didn't want people to stare. But she could feel the weight of their eyes anyway. Customers sitting with steaming plates of eggs and bacon, warm cups of cocoa, syrup glistening under the lights. She backed away from the counter, holding the useless dollar as if it were a symbol of everything she had left, nearly nothing. But before she could step aside, a voice behind her spoke, deep and steady. "I'll take them all." She turned. A man stood behind her in line, early 30s, messy dark hair, wearing a worn brown jacket that looked like it had survived years of hard work. He had a quiet, tired strength in his eyes, the kind people carried only after life had knocked them down and forced them to stand up again. Beside him stood 2 small children, a pair of twins bundled in mismatched scarves and bright Christmas hats. The little boy hugged a stuffed bear, missing one eye. The little girl held a candy cane like it was treasure. Ava stared at the man, confused. I don't understand." He stepped forward gently. "All the pancakes," he told the cashier. "Every single one you have made. And add hot cocoa for her, and for us." The cashier blinked. "All of them? Sir, that's a lot." "That's fine," he said. Ava shook her head instantly. No, please, I don't need." The man turned to her with a softness that disarmed every protest. "It's Christmas," he said. "Let me." Ava swallowed hard, overwhelmed. "But you don't even know me." His smile was small and tired but genuine. "I don't need to." The little girl tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered loudly, "does she get extra syrup too?" The man chuckled. "Yes, Sally. She gets extra syrup." Ava felt her throat tighten painfully. She looked at the children, both watching her with innocent curiosity, and then at the man who had just bought an entire batch of pancakes for a complete stranger. This wasn't charity. It wasn't pity. It was kindness. Honest, simple kindness. Something she hadn't received in a very long time. She hesitated. I can't accept this." "You can," he said quietly. "Because maybe today was the day you needed someone to remind you that the world isn't always cruel." And then, as if sensing her fear, he added, "I've been there too." Those 4 words struck deeper than she expected. The cashier returned with a plate stacked high with warm, fluffy pancakes, more food than Ava had seen in days, steam curling upward like hope rising from ashes. The man turned to the cashier again. "And can you bag the rest? We'll hand them out to whoever walks in behind us. Nobody should be hungry today." Ava stared at him, stunned. Who was this man? Why did someone with so little— she could tell by the frayed cuffs of his jacket, the patched knees of the kid's pants— give so much? She whispered, "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." He shook his head. "You don't have to." The twins grinned at her as if they'd just welcomed her into their warm little world. And in that small, ordinary diner, on a cold Christmas morning, Ava felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. Real, trembling, stubborn hope. And she didn't yet know that this man, the single dad with tired hands and a heart too big for his own good, was about to change not just her Christmas, but her entire life. The warmth of the pancakes filled her hands, but the warmth of his kindness filled something deeper. A stranger had fed her, yet somehow it felt like she had known him forever. What she didn't know was that he had given his last dollars too. Ava sat at a small booth near the window, her hands wrapped around the warm plate the way someone in a storm might cling to a lantern. Outside, snow thickened against the glass, swirling like a white curtain closing the world out. Inside, the diner buzzed with the sizzling of grills and the chatter of families. Christmas morning sounds she had been dreading a few hours ago, now felt softer, less cruel. Across from her, the twins slid into the seat beside their father, who placed their mugs of cocoa gently in front of them. Ava looked at the man again, unable to ignore her curiosity. He had the look of someone who carried too much weight, but refused to let his children feel even an ounce of it. His shoulders were broad but slumped with exhaustion, his hair messy, his hands calloused. Maybe a mechanic. Maybe a construction worker. Maybe someone who worked too many hours and slept too few. The twins began stirring their cocoa vigorously, making little chocolate whirlpools. The man glanced at Ava. "I'm Daniel," he said simply. "And these two tornadoes are Ellie and Evan." Ava smiled faintly. "I'm Ava." "Pretty," Ellie said with absolute sincerity, swinging her legs. Ava laughed softly. "Thank you." The first bite of pancake nearly broke her. It wasn't the taste, though it was soft and warm and buttery. It was the fact she hadn't eaten something this comforting in weeks. Her eyes stung, and she blinked it away quickly. Daniel noticed. "Of course he did." "You don't have to pretend you're okay," he said quietly. Not pitying. Not prying. Just honest. Ava looked down. "I'm trying." He nodded. "Trying is more than most people give you credit for." His words hit her deeper than he could know. No one had said something kind to her in months. She wasn't sure how to hold kindness anymore. It felt like trying to hold water. Beautiful, impossible, slipping through her fingers before she could keep any for herself. She hesitated, then asked softly, "Why did you do it?" "The pancakes. For someone you don't know." Daniel looked at his kids for a long moment before answering. "Because once," he said, "a stranger did the same for us." Ava listened as he continued, voice low. "After my wife passed, I couldn't afford much of anything. I had 2 toddlers, no savings, and a job that paid me enough to barely breathe. One winter we had nothing left. I mean nothing. And some man at a grocery store noticed I was choosing between baby food and bread." He exhaled. "He paid for everything in my cart." Ava's chest tightened. "And I promised myself," Daniel added, "that whenever I could, even if it hurt, I'd do the same for someone else." Ava stared at him. She hadn't expected that. She hadn't expected his eyes to hold so much quiet history. And she had definitely not expected to feel something strange forming inside her, like she wasn't alone in the world anymore. The twins finished their cocoa, whipped cream covering their upper lips like tiny mustaches. "Daddy," Evan said, "can she sit with us for the rest of Christmas?" Ava's eyes widened. "Oh, sweetheart, Daniel chuckled. "Let's ask Ava if she has plans." Plans. The word almost made her laugh. What plans did a homeless woman living in a shelter have? But she didn't want to burden them with the truth. She didn't want to place her brokenness on the table between them. "It's okay," Ava said softly. "I don't want to take your family time." "You're not taking anything," Daniel replied. "The more the merrier, right?" Ellie nodded vigorously. "We can share pancakes. Daddy bought all of them." Ava looked at Daniel in disbelief. You really bought them all? He smirked. Well, not literally all in the world. Just all in this diner. Ava laughed, really laughed for the first time in months. And then, the bell above the diner door chimed. A man entered, tall, polished coat, expensive scarf. His eyes scanned the room with the impatience of someone who wasn't used to waiting or being disappointed. Pancakes, he said sharply to the cashier. Everything you have. The cashier winced. I'm so sorry, sir. The gentleman over there already bought them. The man turned sharply, eyes landing on Daniel, then on Ava, then on the mountain of pancakes stacked between them. Something about his stare sent a chill down her spine. Daniel didn't notice, but Ava did, because she recognized those eyes. She had worked for him. He was her former boss, the man who fired her 2 months ago, the man whose company collapse dragged her into homelessness, the man who hadn't even remembered her face as she packed her things and left. And now he was walking straight toward their table. Her breath caught. Her hands tightened around her fork. The warmth of the pancakes no longer comforted, because suddenly Ava realized Christmas morning was about to turn into something she didn't expect, something she wasn't ready for. Her former boss stopped inches from their table, and her heart nearly stopped with him. The man who ruined her life was now staring at the stranger who had saved her morning. But the single dad didn't know he was about to defend her in a way no one ever had. Ava's breath hitched as the polished, impatient man approached their booth. Snowflakes still clung to his expensive coat, melting into dark droplets across the fabric. But his expression, sharp, irritated, arrogant, hadn't softened in the slightest. Mr. Hawthorne. Ava knew that face. She had known it too well once, back when she sat behind a receptionist's desk at Hawthorne and Brook Consulting, trying to stay invisible enough not to be blamed for anything she didn't cause. The same man who fired her 2 months ago, claiming downsizing, though everyone knew he simply replaced her with someone younger and cheaper. Now he stopped in front of her table, eyes narrowing. You, he said, voice cutting like ice. I thought that was you. Ava's pulse pounded in her ears. She shrank slightly, instinctively wanting to disappear. Daniel noticed immediately. His posture shifted, not aggressive, but protective, like a wall solidifying in front of his children. You know her? Daniel asked, calm but firm. Ava opened her mouth, but the words tangled in her throat. Mr. Hawthorne answered instead. She used to work for me, he said dismissively, until she made too many mistakes. Constantly late. Constantly incompetent. I had no choice but to let her go. Ava flinched at the lie. Daniel's eyes narrowed. She tried to speak. That's not what happened. Hawthorne cut in sharply. And now look at you. Living off strangers' generosity. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. Ava's stomach twisted. She felt exposed, humiliated. The diner suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. Daniel's voice, when it came, was steady but edged. Sir, you need to step back. Hawthorne scoffed. Excuse me? You're upsetting her, Daniel said. And it's Christmas morning, so step back. People were beginning to look up from their tables. The cashier paused mid-pour of coffee. Even the twins sensed the shift, Ellie inching toward Ava, Evan clutching his bear tighter. Hawthorne laughed lightly, a mocking sound. Who exactly are you? Her savior? You can't even afford a decent coat. Daniel didn't react to the insult. He didn't need to. He simply said, I'm a father. And my kids don't need to hear a grown man talk like that. Hawthorne's jaw tightened. But Ava couldn't let Daniel defend her alone. Her voice shook, but she forced it out. I didn't make mistakes. I was never late. I covered shifts when people quit. I worked overtime, without pay. And you fired me because you could. Her voice cracked, and then broke completely. And that job was all I had. For the first time, Hawthorne hesitated, not out of regret, but annoyance at the attention they were drawing. He glanced around the diner, noticing the glares. People didn't appreciate cruelty over breakfast. Look, Hawthorne said with forced composure. I only wanted pancakes. But apparently they were bought out by someone who… Daniel stood up. Full height. Shoulders squared.
Calm.
Unshaken. By someone who wanted to help, Daniel said. Not hurt. Something in his tone made Hawthorne step a half-inch back. Daniel continued, voice firm. You had no right to speak to her like that. Not then. Not now. Ava's heart quivered. No one had ever stood up for her like that. Daniel wasn't a knight, or a hero, or some dramatic savior. He was just good. Brave in the quiet way only real people could be. Hawthorne's lips tightened with annoyance, but pride forced him to respond. Fine, he said stiffly. Enjoy your charity feast. Ava winced. Daniel didn't. Instead, Daniel leaned forward slightly and spoke so clearly the whole diner could hear. It isn't charity when it's shared from the heart. A soft murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Hawthorne flushed red and turned sharply away, muttering under his breath as he exited the diner, pushing the door open so hard the bell nearly flew off. Silence settled for a moment. Daniel sat down again, calm as if nothing had happened. Ava stared at him, overwhelmed. You didn't have to do that. He shook his head.
Yeah.
I did. She swallowed. I'm sorry you saw that side of my life. Ava, he said softly, I didn't see a side. I saw a person who deserved respect. Her eyes brimmed. She blinked hard, but Daniel noticed. He reached across the table, not touching her, just offering his hand for her to place hers beneath if she wanted.
She did.
Her fingers brushed his knuckles, and the warmth spread through her like something she had forgotten existed. Ellie leaned on the table. Miss Ava, she said sweetly, Daddy only stands up for people he really likes. Daniel coughed. Ellie? But it's true. Evan chimed in. He only talks like that when he cares. Ava laughed, wiping her eyes. Well, thank you. All of you. Daniel smiled softly. It's okay now. He's gone. But Ava shook her head. No, she whispered. Something tells me he's not. Because the look Hawthorne gave her before leaving wasn't just hateful. It was calculating. As if seeing her with Daniel and the pancakes he paid for had sparked something else entirely. Something dangerous. Christmas wasn't done with her yet. The door slammed open before she could blink. Who did this to you? The single dad demanded, voice breaking. Christmas miracles weren't supposed to hurt this much. And yet, in that moment, she realized, kindness sometimes returns in ways that terrify you first. Snow clung to her eyelashes as she stumbled through the apartment doorway, breath shaking, arms trembling as if she had run miles instead of blocks. Ellie didn't even remember how she got there. Everything was a blur of icy wind, blurry streetlights, and the desperate thought that maybe she shouldn't have come at all. But she didn't have anywhere else to go. Warmth hit her first, then the smell. Cinnamon. Vanilla. And something buttery that reminded her painfully of the pancake stall from that morning. It was too much. Her throat closed. And then the door behind her slammed open. The force made her jump. Ellie? His voice was rough, scared. Who did this to you? She turned. Daniel stood there, still in his worn work boots, still smelling faintly of engine oil and winter air. But the expression on his face captured her. The terror, the fury, the protectiveness of someone who had not expected her but cared anyway. His 5-year-old son, Noah, peeked from behind his legs with wide eyes, clutching a stuffed penguin. Ellie tried to speak. I shouldn't have come. You came here because you're hurt. Daniel moved toward her, slow but sure. That means you should have. Her knees weakened. She grabbed the back of the worn couch to stay upright. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't know where else to go. He reached her before she fell and gently steadied her shoulders. You don't ever have to apologize for needing help. No one had ever said that to her before. No one. The warmth of the apartment felt unreal. A small artificial Christmas tree blinked in the corner, uneven, messy, clearly decorated by a child. Paper snowflakes hung crookedly from the ceiling. A single red stocking was taped to the wall. Noah lifted it shyly. Daddy says Santa still comes, even if we can't afford a fireplace. Ellie's heart cracked. It was all so simple, so fragile, so full of love. And she had arrived with nothing in her pockets but fear. Daniel helped her sit on the couch, still watching her like she might disappear if he blinked too long. "What happened?" he asked softly, but the softness didn't hide the steel underneath. Ellie swallowed. He got angry. Daniel's jaw tightened. "The man you work for?" She shook her head slowly. "The man I rent from. He said I didn't pay enough. He tried to grab me. Said I could work off the missing money." Daniel inhaled sharply. The kind of inhale people only make when they're choosing between punching something or holding themselves together. "Did he hurt you?" "No," she said quickly. "I ran before he could. But he said he would be waiting when I came back." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they glowed with a quiet, burning promise. "You're not going back." Her breath caught again. "I have to. My things are there. Nothing in that room matters more than your safety." His voice dropped. "And I'm not letting you walk back into danger." She blinked at him, stunned by how absolute his words sounded. People had told her she mattered before, kind teachers, a nurse once, even a stranger in a church line, but never like this. Never with this intensity. Never with this unshakable certainty. Noah crawled up beside her, offering his tiny penguin. "You can hold him. He makes bad dreams go away." If she hadn't been trembling before, she was shaking now. Kindness was overwhelming when you weren't used to it. Daniel stepped into the small kitchen and returned with a steaming mug of hot chocolate. The mug was chipped. The marshmallows were melting unevenly. But to her, it felt like the warmest, most precious thing she'd been handed all year. She cupped it with both hands to stop the shaking. "You didn't have to do all this." He met her eyes. "You spent your last dollar feeding a kid who wasn't even yours." His voice softened to something almost reverent. "Don't tell me I shouldn't help you when you're the one who showed me what kindness looks like." Her throat tightened painfully. "You remember that?" she whispered. "I remember everything about that moment," he said. "I remember thinking you looked cold, tired, and still chose generosity." Ellie stared into her hot chocolate. "No one has ever said that like it mattered." "Then they've been blind," Daniel answered. The apartment was small, and worn, and imperfect. But for the first time in months, maybe years, Ellie didn't feel alone. Daniel sat opposite her, elbows on his knees, watching her with quiet concern. "You can stay here tonight," he said gently. "It's not much, but it's safe." Her breath hitched. "Are you sure?" He nodded once. "Absolutely." And then softer. "Christmas is supposed to be about taking care of each other, right?" Ellie didn't know when the tears started falling. But she did know one thing. This tiny apartment, decorated with paper snowflakes and courage, felt more like home than anywhere she'd been in a long time. She woke up to the smell of pancakes, but she didn't remember falling asleep. The single dad wasn't supposed to save her. Christmas morning wasn't supposed to feel like a miracle. And yet, there she was, warm, safe, and surrounded by a kindness she never believed she deserved. Ellie blinked awake slowly, the room glowing with soft winter sunlight filtering through thin curtains. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. She reached up instinctively, touching her cheek where the cold had burned her skin last night, except now it felt warm, soothed, healed. Then she heard it. A sizzling sound. A low hum of a Christmas song. A child's giggle. She sat up, blanket slipping down her shoulders. Daniel and his little boy were in the tiny kitchen, standing over the stove. Noah was holding a bowl of batter, tongue sticking out in concentration, while Daniel expertly flipped a pancake with the ease of someone who'd taught himself out of necessity, not luxury. She watched them silently. The image felt unreal. Too gentle, too safe, too warm to belong to her life. Before she could gather her thoughts, Noah spotted her and lit up. "She's awake. Daddy, she's awake." Daniel turned, and his entire expression softened. "Morning," he said, voice warm enough to melt snow. "You fell asleep on the couch. Thought you'd need the rest." Ellie blinked again, struggling to find her voice. I didn't mean to. You were exhausted, he cut in gently. And you're safe here. That's all that matters.
Safe.
She tasted the word like something new. He placed a plate of fresh pancakes on the small table, golden and perfect, made with effort and love. Come eat, he said. It's Christmas. Ellie sat carefully, like she was afraid she might break something sacred. Noah climbed into the chair beside her, swinging his legs happily. These are special pancakes, he announced proudly. We only make them on Christmas. Daddy put cinnamon in them. Ellie smiled softly. They smell amazing. Noah grinned wider. And they're extra special because you're here. Her heart squeezed so hard it almost hurt. Daniel watched her reaction closely, as if weighing every expression, every breath, making sure she wasn't overwhelmed. She took her first bite. Warmth spread through her mouth, her chest, her entire soul. For a moment, she almost cried, not because the pancakes were extraordinary, but because someone had put care into making something for her. It had been a long time since anyone had done that. Daniel cleared his throat softly. Listen, he began, glancing briefly at Noah to make sure he wasn't listening too closely. About last night, we need to talk about what happens next. Her stomach tightened. I didn't want to be a burden, Ellie whispered quickly. I'll leave today. I won't cause trouble. Daniel froze. A shadow crossed his face. Pain, frustration, disbelief. Ellie, he said quietly, you showing up at my door to escape a dangerous situation is not causing trouble. And you're not a burden. She lowered her gaze. I just don't want to ruin anything for you and Noah. Daniel sat back, exhaling slowly. You helped us long before you ever walked in here.
She frowned, confused. How?
He took a moment before answering. Before yesterday, I'd been feeling like the world forgot about people like us. Single parents who try, struggle, fail, try again. People who work hard and still barely scrape by. He swallowed. But then I saw you give away your last dollar, your last bit of hope, to feed a stranger's child. Her breath hitched. That moment reminded me, he continued softly, that kindness still exists. That people still care. You changed something in me and in my son. Noah nodded enthusiastically, hugging his penguin. You made Daddy smile extra big. Ellie covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Daniel leaned forward slightly. So no, you're not leaving today unless you want to. The room fell quiet. Snowflakes danced outside the window, swirling like soft blessings from the sky. Where will I go? Ellie whispered, more to herself than him. Daniel met her gaze with steady, protective warmth. We'll figure it out. Together. Together. The word lit something warm and trembling inside her. After breakfast, Noah insisted they open presents, which turned out to be crayon drawings and a tiny snow globe Daniel had found at a thrift store months earlier. When Noah placed the snow globe in her hands, Ellie froze. For you, he said proudly. Because everyone should get a Christmas present. Ellie's fingers shook. Inside the globe was a tiny house covered in snow.
Warm. Bright.
Safe. A home she never had, and yet somehow felt like she'd found. She looked at Daniel. He wasn't smiling wide. Just a soft, gentle upturn of the lips. The expression of someone who hoped, quietly, carefully, that she saw what he was offering. Not romance. Not obligation. Not pity. But belonging. Hours later, as the world outside glowed with golden afternoon light, Ellie stood by the window watching snow fall. Daniel stepped up beside her. What are you thinking about? He asked. Ellie took a deep breath. That maybe. Christmas miracles don't always look like magic, she said softly. Sometimes they look like pancakes, and safety, and a warm place to wake up. Daniel nodded slowly. And sometimes, he added, they look like the right person arriving at your door. Ellie's heart fluttered. She looked at him, really looked at him. The single dad who bought all the pancakes so she wouldn't go hungry, who offered safety without conditions, who opened his home as though it had been waiting for her. Her voice trembled when she spoke. Thank you for everything. Daniel shook his head gently. No, he said. Thank you for letting us share Christmas with you. And just like that, quiet, simple, breathtaking. She realized this was the first Christmas she had ever truly felt loved.